introduction, and thank you all for coming. My name is Bill Simon. I was with Estes Industries from 1962 to 1977, excuse me. When I left there, I was the most senior employee. There's some of them there now that have been there for 40 plus years, though, so that record went away a long time ago. I started out being hired to produce the Model Rocket News, and found out real soon that if you're going to send out a MRN or a catalog, you really need to have new product to feature in it to financially justify the mailing. So that's how I got involved in developing kits originally, was that it was a sheer necessity, and I enjoyed building model rockets. I actually built a model rocket before I arrived at Estes. After I arrived there, a lot of the R&D activity in those early days took place in Vern's garage. And our process in R&D there changed over the years. It evolved. We had some principles that we followed. We wanted our models and our activities to be educational. Educating, encouraging young people to be involved in their schoolwork, to have some dreams beyond being an accountant at BBD&O or whatever. We felt that was important. And finally, we had some ecological issues. It was evolutionary because we started out very primitively. What we had to refer to, the precedent that was there, was model airplane instructions. And I'll hit that one again in just a moment. As you see there, Vern had a philosophy that the kid, the rocketeer, was the most important person on Earth. And he wanted to keep them engaged and involved. We wanted our instructions for the kids to be easy to follow. As we went through that, we figured out that if you have 3 ways of building a model, in other words, you have an overall assembly drawing that a person with any reasonable skill can look at that assembly drawing and say, oh, okay, this is how it goes together. You have step-by-step illustrated instructions. And finally, you have descriptive text for each step that makes it possible for your person to actually build the rocket without ever looking at the pictures. At least that was our goal. And we tried to improve with every kit. This is what we started out looking at. This was what we assumed was kit instructions. Okay. Our early kits, we did a lot that was intended to teach different aspects of rocketry. One of the first things that I ended up doing there was sitting on a rock up in Greenhorn Peak with my typewriter on my lap and typing up, writing a technical report on multi-staging, which was then put out under Vern's name, because everything that we did was Vern Estes. And finally, we were ecological. We recycled illustrations, text out of one kit for the next one. arranged things on the sheet of balsa so that we could put the most fin on the smallest sheet of balsa. In other words, keep the waste to a minimum, because every fraction of a cent is important in the overall affordability and profitability of the product. And finally, we had this theory that the materials for a model rocket, and this was what Harry and others had imparted to Vern way back at the very beginning. Lightweight, low density, balsa and paper. We had some real issues early on over whether we should use plastic nose cones. Where ideas for the kids came from was many and varied. Vern would say, we need a kit that, and Gene Street or myself would dutifully sit down and design a kit that did that. But also we were avid readers of a lot of publications. NSTA had a publication that they put out, that's the National Science Teachers Association, that had pictures of just about every missile and sounding rocket that was in production. And that was a good source of ideas. Aviation Week, it was an ad in Aviation Week that Gene Street saw that led to the Mars Snooper. Later on, from various publications, we saw the aerospike nozzle concepts from Martin Marietta and single stage to orbit things, and those led to the Mars Lander, which has been a pretty popular kit among serious rocketeers. But then we just sit around and bullshit. And it would be typically, what if we could blow mold a plastic nose cone with design features in it? We could make it with this section for the nose cone, this for a transition section, this for another transition section, and it all come out in one piece. And other times we just come up with something that nobody else has ever done, and we just beat our heads against the wall for a while and come up with something. We didn't have CAD. Balsa was cheap. Initially, wadding tubes, the BT-40 was a fireworks-based product. I mean, it was used originally by Zenith Fireworks. It was heavy. Our igniters were a piece of just plain nichrome wire. You take a ballpoint pen and you wrap a little coil on there. You poke it up into the nozzle. You secure it with a small piece of wadding. And you know what? If you got a decent power supply, that's still the most reliable igniter you can find. And beer was cheap. Editorial comment here. As things went along, the press took notice of us. We got articles in Life. This was the Denver Post-Empire magazine. Mechanics Illustrated and so forth ran articles about model rocketry and Estes Industries. This was a description in that Empire magazine. A copy of the whole article is down there on the desk if you want to look at it afterwards. We had several people there that were really good. Gene Street was a good man. Wayne Kellner, Mike Dorfler, Larry Ringer were all excellent designers. Ed Brown was a very excellent designer too, though he doesn't have the wacky aspect to him that you need to do something like the, oddballs. he's not somebody who designed a sake bomb model. But there are some of the folks, as I look back in the day, Larry, after he left Estes, went on to become head of development for the world's largest toy maker, which job he retired from. The world's largest toy maker that you never heard of because they do all these things that go into Happy Meals and that type of thing. And unfortunately, Mike Dorfler passed away this last summer. Gene Street and Bill C. both died quite a while back. We had some principles that we worked on, like safety was really first and foremost, and affordability was also very big there, and yeah. You were on salary, so you put in lots of hours. That was Byrne's philosophy. This is what the R&D department looked like in '64. This scrawny little kid over there in the one corner, and Gene Street in the foreground. Thank you. I won't admit to it. We had a lot of fun. Okay, sorry about that. Today, the model rocket companies aren't much, R&D departments aren't much bigger than that. In fact, Estes R&D department is sitting over there, and it'd probably take two of me in those days to equal one of him, but
I'm not that fat.
And we had a little fun. There was one year that Leroy came out with a new catalog. It was a pretty nice one, nicer than the Estes catalog. He sent a copy of it to Vern, accompanied with a crying towel. We turned around and sent something back at him. We were competitors, but we were also friends. And that was important for the industry. And I think that's the case today, too. We came up with this one just before it was determined that Freon, which was the cold propellant, was bad for the ozone layer. So we had all that tooling investment, which, I mean, it was, in terms of the company size at that time, it was a respectable amount of money, and nothing we could do with it, because we felt that it was not a good idea to have model rocket engines shooting out flame going in close proximity to the ground for a significant period of time. And let's see here. Let's see here. Exit. I have I've run over my time here, so I'll pull this out because John needs his turn. And afterwards, if you have questions, I'd be very glad to answer them. So thank you very much.
I don't have a fancy slideshow. What? Bill? Is that you?
That's me.
This is a picture of Bill and Vern when he was a young man. Taking through some files, and well, if you have a copy, but you got one
Well,
now.
thank you very much.
What we do these days is pretty much the same, except now it's mainly computer-based. One of the questions is, how do you come up with designs? Just think of them. I mean, I have a notebook, I bring it home with me every day, I bring it to work every day, and I sit on the porcelain throne, I have a notebook with me. Whenever something pops in your head, I do a little sketch. Laying in bed, I do a little sketch, and come up with designs. I got a sketchbook, I got a book full of sketches. So one day, maybe there'll be a design. Or the other way is, I go in the back room, I'm digging around, oh, that's cool, nose cone, I remember that from blah, blah, 20 years ago. And then I say, hey, do we still have the tooling for this? Yeah, we got the tooling. Here's how I design a rocket. Then I find out we don't have the tooling for it. Oh, but anyway, this is a sketch. I guess, I wish I would have put it up there, but we said we weren't going to do presentations on the screen. But anyway, this is a simple sketch. And what I end up doing is turning that sketch into something that looks like that, which is a 3D solid model CAD file. I'll then break it into the pieces. This one here is a skill level 5. I wanted something where people can actually build instead of just slapping something together. My main background is model airplanes. I've been doing airplanes and rockets for about 40 years. So I wanted to put some model building technique, airplane technique in the rocketry. So the structure of that is actually this. All laser cut parts, it snaps together, jig fits together, and then cardstock goes on the outside. There's this cardstock gizmo that goes in the back. Speaking of that nose cone that I didn't have anymore, you guys remember the shape of that kind of nose cone there? Well, I had to redesign it, so if I'm going to redesign it, I'm going to make it my own. So I added some stuff to it, added a nozzle to it. And now what he was saying before, where you can make multiple parts into one blow mold, I've got a nose and a cone, the exhaust cone back there. And then it's got some injected molded plastic parts that go on it as well. So you go from something in your head to you make a prototype, you fly it. Once it flies right, then my next step is to produce all the artwork that goes into the instruction manual itself. And I do that with AutoCAD. I generate a solid model, so I can rotate it and do whatever I need to do. I can remove parts from it, and you start off, and I give them this, step by step by step, from left to right. You get this piece, you do this. You glue it to this piece, you glue it up. So I go step by step by step. Same thing here. So these are the actual drawings that are going to go on the file. So our visual graphics department literally just grabs it and just drops it right into their graphics program. And again, it's just step after step after step. The beautiful part about doing it on the computer is that although it's not an art form like it was back in the 70s where they actually drew it and it looked like art, it's accurate. It's perfect. The orientation, you angle it like this, and whatever that fin looks like, it looks like. Back in the day, they would sketch it, and it might not be exactly right, because it was art. In my opinion, it was art. It was beautiful, but it wasn't, I don't know, exact. So I totally respect what they do, but now you can orientate it, and it is what it is what it is. Then I also export it as an object file, so that the visual graphics can do what you people hate, and we can not have a model in the catalog, or not have a model on the panel of the box or the packaging. Most guys keep saying, well, how come it's a rendered model? Well, it's faster. You want it blue? It's blue. You want it red? It's red. It's just faster to do it that way. So there's only a couple models out there of this new lineup that were actually models. The rest were three-dimensional objects that they drop in their software and they wrap the details around it, and that's just the way it is these days. That's how it is at Estes. I'm done.
Is that one out yet?
No, this one, typically a rocket, I will, from beginning to end, would take about an hour to 6 hours to design something. Most rockets are simple. My Narcon cruiser, I probably spent 20 hours on that one. This one, I've actually just messed around and messed around and messed around for about 2 months. It's like, it needs something. It needs a little something here. It needs something here. I had launch lugs on the bottom. I said, how does launch lugs? They're just ugly. I don't want launch lugs. So now I got these molded plastic pods that go there that got detail. Well, while it's not flying, you got this big cannon now that slides in the front of that thing, so you got this awesome 2 cannons on the bottom. So it just evolves. Sci-fi wants to me, they just need a little bit more attention to detail. It's 3 fins, a 4-fin rocket, the body tube. The hardest part is the deco. What colors you're going to put on it, what scheme, what decals. That is by far, no, that's probably the second hardest part. The hardest part of any rocket is giving it a name. People keep saying, why do you keep reusing the same name, Viking? Why has Viking been on 15 bloody rockets? Well, we own the name. We can use it. You would not believe how hard it is to put a name on a rocket. We give it to our legal department, no, can't use it because XYZ is using it. Or something, they're using it. This is a big company, you don't want to screw with them, you know. So we change it. Well, can we add something? No, you can't do that. So you give it another name. It can take 2-3 months to get a name sometimes for a rocket, or longer. Or that's why you have EPM 010, whatever the heck I call it, I don't even know. It's because we got frustrated. It's like, forget it. EPM stands for excess part mounting. We have an inventory of 70,000 nose cones. I used them. So, that's what it is, an excess part model. And then it's 2010, I think, so it's 010. So that's how we got the name on that one. Just because you gotta give it a name. And just names are very, very, very hard. So also now you're gonna see our instructions. We're evolving into trilingual instructions. So every one of our instructions is gonna have Spanish, French, and English on it. All of our decals are going to have Spanish, French, and English on it. Don't know why, but that's the way it's going. What else can I say? I mean,
I just designed rockets.
it's I don't know. I just designing is something I've done all my life. Not all my rockets fly right. Some of the weird ones don't fly right. But you get them to fly right. There's a little extra nose weight, move some stuff here or there. You know, I tend to not do simple 3 fins in a body tube. It's boring to me, but I know we still need them, so I still do them, but I'm doing more challenging stuff. Scale stuff. We got some scale stuff in the works. A scale rocket, that could take me 1 or 2 months of just nothing, just cat done. Because I got to do, if it's got vacuum form wraps, you got to do that. If it's got, you know, a scale fin, it's got rivets and panel lines, all that's got to be drawn. For production, okay, let's say you, nose cone, good example. You draw a nose cone, you send it to China, say, hey China, can you tool this? They'll say, well no, you this, so then you got to change it a little bit. Or they'll say, yeah, we can tool it, great. So then they send you first shots. It takes 6 weeks or so to get the part back, maybe sometimes 2 months. To get the part back. This one here, it was bad.
So you directly hard tool right off, or do you soft tool?
Hard tool.
Hard tool right off.
Yeah. Because I have a rapid prototype machine at work,
Oh, below.
so I'll prototype it.
Yeah.
I'll fly it, I know it's going to be right, the weight's going to be different, but probably not enough to worry about. So we'll get a part back, like this one, it wasn't right, some of the details weren't right. I said, hey, you got to fix, and you got to show pictures. You got to give them a picture with arrows, fix this, and then they send me another shot. But I got one more problem with it, so they're going to say, okay, we'll try something different, and let us know. And if that don't work, I have another fix that I modified the drawing, so they're going to modify the tool. They're going to massage the tool. Because I want all the detail to show up. Compared to what they did in the good old days, we can put tons and tons of detail in vacuum form parts now. I mean, take a look at this, it's got things all over the place. And since it doesn't cost me anything to put a little extra, a little CAD time, that's all it takes. And piece part is the same. It's the amount of plastic, so. I don't know what else to tell you. You have an idea, you build it. I don't know. The problem is, when am I going to run out of ideas? Don't know. I've got Estes is going to have about 30 new rockets out again this year. Some of them you'll never see unless you go to Toys R Us or other places. There's new fin cans coming out for these. E2X kits, you know, the plastic fins, easy to assemble, all colored parts. I know a lot of die-core modelers don't like them, but we sell a lot of them. It's a big part of the hobby. of the industry. They buy it, and hopefully they're gonna move into an actual kit where they build. And that's what it is. You just want them to keep buying kits, keep buying motors, and you know, we still have a hobby. What else can I tell you? Hey, give me some questions, because, yes?
Do they give you a quota of like,
At the end? Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
did they give you a quota of how many type of rockets we need, you know, we're gonna hit this demographic, we need so many models for this demographic, so many models for this demographic?
Oh, well, marketing should come to me and say, you know, we need 3 more mini engines, we need 3 more Gs, we need this, and they kind of do that. I've been very, very fortunate. I'm the only R&D guy there, and I just design stuff, and they haven't turned anything down yet, because it hasn't been discussed. I'm sure one day they will say, but not yet. Accessories, you saw some accessories, those are, they have an epiphany. I drive to work, I draw it, I grow it, it works. I say, what do you think about this? Yeah, let's do it, we tool it. Some of the stuff is just, bam, lightning fast. Within a week, it's in the tooling. Some stuff, this nose cone, probably over a month before I actually started tooling it. Kits, how do we get into a kit? Is it time yet? How do I say this? China does almost all of our stuff. They'll laser cut, I'll send the drawings for laser cut files. We'll send the belts and parts back. I'll check to make sure they all fit right. If it's just 3 fins, they're gonna work. If it's interlocking stuff, I gotta make sure it works. If not, I change it. Instruction manuals, we send them the artwork, they send us prints, we look at it, we say, oh, missed this, they redo it, send it back. Instruction manuals are reviewed, I can't tell you how many hours and how many people look at these instruction manuals. And you're still going to find at least one mistake in every single instruction manual you'll ever see. Probably more. It's just the way it is. So we'll get what we call samples of nose cones. We get samples of body tubes. I check the fit of the nose cones with the body tubes. I check the fit of the laser cut rings with the body tubes and the engine tubes. So everything we know fits together. China says, okay, well, we tell China, make us some pre-production samples. It's going to have full panel artwork, it's going to be bagged, it's going to be exactly like it's a kit. We get those in, we open it up, we count the parts, make sure the parts are right, make sure the parts fit again. We build a rocket from that PP sample, we fly the rocket from that PP sample to make sure it flies, doesn't go unstable. And if everything's good, we say, okay, turn it on, and they make thousands of them. And take them about, I don't know, 3 weeks to a month to make them. And it takes a little slow boat on over. So from the time I say, here's a rocket, by the time we get it, it's about 7 months. Sometimes longer, sometimes less, but usually longer. It's the way it is. As we purchase product here, we ship it there. We make product there to go with the stuff we sent there. We put it in the bag and ship it back. I know it seems silly, but it's the most economical way to do it right now. Currently. It may change. We keep talking about bringing everything back to the U.S. So some of the stuff is, and more will be, and eventually, maybe in 10 years, it might all be. So we'll see what happens. Go for it.
There it is.
I'm Bill Stein, and I'm with Quest Aerospace. And my background comes from the Lee Feaster School of Thought on product design, Centuri. And of course that was you guys' rival, and I saw the eat your heart out, Lee. So there was quite a rivalry early in those days, but Lee Feaster had his own very unique school of thought. And although at the time that I was at Centuri in the late 1970s, Lee was no longer involved day to day. Grant Boyd was. So Grant was kind of my mentor. And he had every bit of Lee's influence still involved with him. So we had a little bit more structure. I come from a background where we were really focused on the cost side, because by the time I was involved, Damon owned both Estes and Centuri, but basically they had cut off product development funding to Centuri. So we had to come up with innovative products and not be able to pay for tooling. We had to figure out how to use existing parts, and were just very expensive or very inexpensive methods to develop the product. So these were some of the basic rules that I was taught back in the early 1970s, and I still follow them today. It's all common sense, economical approaches to how can you do something the most efficient and cost-effective method. When I'm thinking of it, you're really lucky that you're currently in an environment where everything you do just gets sucked in and absorbed. We have a slightly different environment, so we spend a fair amount of time on blue sky ideas, and I can tell you not everything makes it to the cut. The funniest thing I can tell you is that recently we were told that we really should develop something that's a little bit more focused for young girls. And so I was presented with the Hello Kitty model rocket, and that one is not going to make it to market.
Please don't go there.
I should have shown that. I should have brought a picture in the logo. I mean, they actually went so far as to develop a Hello Kitty logo and everything else. So, but what I thought I would spend a little bit of time here on is going through specifically a product that we recently developed, and this was the MLAS vehicle that we introduced in late 2009, very shortly after the real vehicle was test flown at NASA Wallops. Quite honestly, this was not in the queue. Shrox came up to me and says, "Get in here, you gotta see this." And I'm running into his office, and we're watching the actual flight of the test, and we looked at each other and we said, "We gotta kit this thing." And so we just jumped right on it, and the most common question I get asked is, "Do you use Roxim?" Well, to be real honest with you, no. Okay? Most of what we designed is very complicated, and this would be a prime example of the final product. We went back in and put it all in Roxim, and what we learned in practical flight tests was not applicable in Roxim. So you can't just completely do everything on the computer. And at Quest, we still do it the good old-fashioned method, which is we follow the common sense rules. You got to keep the CP-CG relationship correct. A number of different factors. Anyway, this was our first prototype that was put together. This was about 3 days after the Wallops Island launch, and that is a 3-inch diameter Aerotech body tube. We wanted it to have some size. Of course, this particular rocket, incredible challenges, short, fat, forward fins, and you can't throw more design challenges at one rocket at one time. So this was actually the first model, the first flight test model, and this actually shows you the progression that we went through. So this one here on the left is the first model. One of the things that you'll notice, number one, you can tell it's beating shit, and that's because we flew this thing. That model probably has 8 or 9 test flights on it where we were fooling around with all kinds of things. The very last thing we tried, one of the things you'll notice right there is that's a 1/4 inch, 2.5 inch long lag bolt for forward nose weight. We had noticed on the real one that they had some real cool drag panels at the base of it. The slide before this didn't have these really cool little drag plates on it. We tried that to see if we could turbulate the air around the base of it. We never got this one to fly stably, so we moved right along, and you go through kind of a natural progression. Okay, let's stretch it out a little bit. Let's move these fins farther back. So that was the next version. We still really couldn't get it right with that. This particular model, so either this version or this version, got caught in a pine tree, and we spent half a day getting the damn thing out of the tree because it really was important to get it back so that we could have continuity with flight testing. Then we went to this version here. There's some internal changes here that in the next slide I'll be able to show a little bit more. But now you can see we stretched it out a little bit more. We moved the fins back a little bit. The rear fins are actually enlarged 10% on this version. And this one actually flew pretty well, so we knew we were getting really close. But it still required an inordinate amount of nose weight that just wasn't practical from a commercial standpoint. So this final one is actually, the difference is visually from the outside, you can't tell much, but on the next slide, you'll be able to see substantially. Internally, we made quite a few changes to lighten it. Number one, by this time, the actual tube samples had arrived from Euclid, and we cut almost 60% of the weight of the tube out of it just by decreasing the wall thickness of the tube. That had some interesting challenges to the structure of it because the tube, it's so thin, it wants to stay in an egg shape. And so from an assembly standpoint, sliding the rings into it became a little bit of a challenge. But you'll notice the progression of, number one, the position of the engine, hanging out the rear to actually being recessed up inside of it. Again, trying to move weight forward and affect that CG relationship. We figured out we're definitely going to have to keep getting that weight out of the rear, so there was weight reduction in this version here. We basically just took that and made it sexier because it was a laser cut part. So that's just kind of an interesting photo analysis of a product that was recently developed and brought to market and has done very well. Quick question?
How were we able to make the cone so quick, or was that an existing item?
Let me go back to slides here. What is that basic shape? It's a cone or a bell. We didn't produce that part. Go back to my original parameters, find something that exists and use it. That's a craft Christmas bell. Everybody's now I can see heads turning. Okay, so that was just some ideas on what we did with MLabs. This was a project, the UFO flying saucer that we did. This was back in the Toy Biz days. This was mid-1990s. And kind of interesting progression on this one. We started out with vacuform. This was 2 vacuform halves. That thing on a C motor had so much drag to it, it would not have gone as high as this ceiling here. It was not practical. So the next step to it was, okay, let's see if we can reduce some of the drag. That didn't work too well. Then we decided to progress to something, back away from the vac forming. We actually went to the concept of 2 injection mold, very thin wall injection mold parts. So that's what this progressed to. And this is the actual final product, painted and decorated. This is the reverse, the underside, progressively. You can just see the progression of things that we tried. This was actually, this motor mount was really hard to center in there, so we went with more attaching the wire legs they wanted this to be a ready-to-fly product, so that it basically could snap together. So the design of the legs and those wire forms was an interesting process. And then on the next slide, long story short, we wound up with about almost 7,000 top halves of the saucer. Don't ask me where the bottom molded pieces went to. We wound up with about 6,000 of these in inventory. And from my Century days, you can't throw anything away. Figure out a way to use it. So this turned into a SPEV. Your acronym was, what's your acronym for spare parts?
Oh, this was EPM.
EPM, okay. The Century acronym was SPEV, S-P-E-V, Spare Parts Elimination Vehicle. This was actually last summer, we figured out, okay, well, we still could use this whole molded top half, and as it turned out, a standard motor mount tube slid into it, which gave us a gluing surface that we could take these 3 laser cut fins, and we just put a real simple little tab so that they snapped into the existing molded holes. And we found a way to sell 6,500 unusable saucer halves and have a really cool saucer kit. When we were approached by Jim on this panel, he said, you know, it'd be really cool to get the 3 of you together to do this. We'll give you each 10 minutes to talk. So that's why all 3 of us were like looking at the watches. But we also thought it would be real cool if we weren't long-winded, but we left enough time at the end for questions. So I'm going to open the floor up if you guys want to come stand back up here. And we would love to individually take the questions. Just as we acknowledge you, point the direction of the right person. So,
Yeah, I'm just wondering about the transition from kits that were put together in the U.S. to doing it in China, and how that changed things. You know, did that need to do more, or that the kits were cheaper, or?
It allows you to purchase rocket kits at a reasonable price. Would that be a fair statement?
yeah. The reason we do it in China is cost, okay? Tooling. Simple blow molds are very expensive.
And companies that go through distribution, meaning through a distributor that then sells to a hobby shop, we have to watch our costs more. If it was, like say, Sunrock that could sell directly to a hobby shop or directly to a customer, he doesn't have our overheads and our expenses and stuff like that. So, and God bless him, he does great stuff, but with economics, it's just, everything's driven by money.
To further expand on that, when we cost the bill of materials for a product, we use 3 decimal points in our costing. Okay? He's talking about fractions of a penny, and it really does matter.
Because you do thousands of something, thousands and thousands and thousands. You know, you have to order 20,000 body tubes of one size or something like that. So everything matters. Do we answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Can you guys share your conventional wisdom with what you believe the price points are? And you guys must discuss it internally, right? Like, we have to get, a rocket kit needs to be this, or a piece of electronics needs to be this. Can you guys kind of share what you think that conventional wisdom is for where the price points need to be?
Good person, Bill.
Oh, temperature has to be $30 or less.
I think so.
You set yourself.
Okay,
Come on.
That's all I wanted to know.
It depends on the rocket. How big is it? What skill level is it?
Well, it's interesting because some of the other companies have kind of, Aerotech and other companies have kind of come up on top, and I'm wondering, you know, Saturn V notwithstanding, what keeps you guys from
Well,
also?
I offer that kit for $15, or I offer this kit, which is the same thing, for $25. Which one's going to sell more? I mean, you're going to sell more with $15.
Right, there's $250 more for you in that, so you must kind of do that math. I'm just wondering if there's some magic.
Yeah, but see, here's the other thing. If I sell, let's say, 1,000 of these kits a year at $25, and I sell 2,000 to 3,000 of these at $15, I might sell 3,000 engines go along with those 3,000 kits.
Right.
So you gotta take that into consideration too. So, that's a hard one to answer. You know,
Pre-inflation, the price points that were significant were $1.25, $1.95, $5, and $10.
Now it's probably 10, 15, 20.
Yeah. We can inflate that by probably times.
Over 20 bucks, I think.
Y'all, that's
sells-
what you need, there's like a need there, right?
Under
20
20
is
bucks,
like
you'll sell, over 20 bucks, you sell a lot less. That's
There's a lot of considerations. Number one, internally, we'll look at our own best sellers, okay? And we can analyze it by units sold, we can analyze it by gross margin. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. And besides looking at it internally, we have some pretty sophisticated customers that will also give us incredible amounts of data as to what they sell. And we listen to them. Number one, they'll tell us, we think you need this and this and this. We have a large customer right now who's telling us, you need to do ready-to-fly rockets. And I'm like, why? He's got 13 of them in his line. What is it that you need, okay, that he's not already given you, 13 products?
I can tell you that. They can't buy through the particular distributor.
You'd be surprised.
Okay, well, and again, you know,
So, yeah. So we have one in the back here.
hobby we're talking about?
I'm sure we're all guilty of this, and the previous panel I was on was about cheap rocketry. And I saw your Christmas bell thing. How much of your inspiration comes from Lowe's and Michael's? And just walking through there and going, what if?
Well, I guess I would say I'm a lot like John. There's a tremendous amount of input points for product idea. All the way from paying attention through Aviation and Space Week of what's happening in the real world, okay, to a head full of creative ideas to we're probably, we use a lot of outside designs. A good 40% of the kits you see in our line have not been developed by myself or Trox or any of the guys that work with us. They've come from the outside, and we turned it into a commercial kit and pay a royalty.
we're the exact opposite. Everything's inside house.
Yeah, that's what you're seeing.
Only one thing, no way.
And it's
One of the coolest things I ever bought model rocketry was the bound set of early model rocket pieces. Just an endless source of not only nostalgia stuff, but great plans and rockets. And I still am building kits from plans back in the
There's
'60s.
websites you can download hundreds of that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, Mike, I bought mine in 1974, and the edges are starting to crumble, so I do go to the webpage for fresh pages.
What blew me away was when Mike Dorfler sent me graphic files of the original versions of the Goody Birds. If any of you are familiar with that product line. When we proposed those things in the first place, they were something that a model rocketeer could relate to. Japanese Baka bomb, that type of thing, B-1, based caricatures. The marketing VP from Damon said, oh, we're going to do this in a more whimsical style. And so he took those and gave them to a buddy of his back in Boston who was supposed to be a graphic designer. And he came up with some really horrible, at least in my opinion, things. And the sales, I think, pretty much bore that out. But so when Mike sent me those original art files, and I sent them to, I forget who, on York, I think it was probably 24 hours before somebody had clone kits on those out.
Yes. Back in the beginning of time, like the 60s, I think there was a 3-stage Estes rocket that had spin stabilization. Whatever happened to spin stabilization? Astron Ranger or something?
Foresight.
across the whole white.
It was not spin, it was not intended to be spin.
So you don't just spin anymore? Nobody does.
Do you need it?
It's different.
Well, that's true. That's what helicopters do. Yes.
You know, here's the progression that you see. You know, part of the original rockets was like, you had the catalog that built up this whole culture of, you know, that customers important. You had these hand-drawn pictures and stuff, and that was like, you know, that's why, I think that's why all of us here thumbed through the old catalog. Then you got the, you know, then the corporations came in, and then it started to like, you know, there was a picture of Estes on the cover, and then you know, then it kind of went away, and then you had these corporate logos on there, and then it's kind of like, you know, very, there's no more stories spun around the kids anymore. You know, they're just like you know, computer-generated, you know, products. You know, that's kind of the evolution. I don't know if it's good or bad or what.
It's probably that way in any industry out there, though. It's less personal. And we're doing things so fast these days. I don't think Estes would ever put out 30 or 40 kids a year. Last year, there was almost 60 kids we put out. I mean, that's unheard of. You just don't do that. In fact, I don't want to do that. That's just way too much work.
But I think that Estes as a brand is really strong now,
Yeah.
and it's because of the past. It's because of that catalog and that whole culture and all the born again rocketeers there.
But look at the age group in this room.
Old friends.
Yeah.
No kids anymore.
No kids in here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. One. They're doing
One
Game
out
Boys.
of 30 to 40,
Texting.
we have one person under the age of 20 in this room. We face stiff competition out there with what's happening virtually in computers. I saw a statistic, 78% of 5-year-olds are proficient with a mouse, okay? But put an X-Acto knife in their hand and they'll kill themselves, okay?
The lawyers will go after.
We have a generation, or at least 2 generations now, okay, who want instant gratification. They want to take the wrapper off the video game, plug it in, and deal with their 3D world, okay? The concept of constructing and working with your hands and thinking how something goes together is lacking, and it's what we fight to keep our companies alive, okay?
And that's why we offer everything. From kits to ready flies. You got to.
But, you know, he was talking about parts and building, you know, part sales are dismal. I mean, we don't sell parts. We sell parts, I don't mean this, but when you look at units, parts just don't sell. People they don't want to create it and build it. They want to shake the box and go out and fly it, okay? And it could very easily be summarized as we have shifted more towards model rocket being an activity and not a hobby. It's something that you go in, you do, you're done, and you're on to the next thing. That's the way kids participate in this.
That's why 95% of all engineers are born in Asia now. And why the U.S. is failing to compete with kids.
There's a question out there.
Yeah, so on the Pareto chart of life here, and if we did it by engines, what's the market look like, you know, in terms of percentage? You know, going from quarter A to, I don't know, what's the biggest now, an O or something? I mean, you know, what's that curve look like in terms of how much money
Units or
do you
dollars?
spend and stuff that's focused on a given, you know, is it A, is it B, is it C, is it half A, is it
I
F?
think for us, this the C65 is the most popular engine.
Same
And
for
then
us.
the B64.
Okay, and kit sales are aligned with that, do they?
Yeah.
Use those engines?
Yeah, Ds and Es, kit sales are nowhere near what it is for standard engines. And standard engines blow away mini engines. This is the way it is.
I can't really share our statistics because he's standing here, but.
You can tell me
Here's
at
the more
Christmas,
interesting
right?
point.
Okay.
Okay, when it comes to kits,
Mhm.
okay, you won't believe how many get bought but never get built.
Oh, you guys probably have a lot of kits.
I have a closet that answers that question.
I built a Polaris 4 years ago that I had since I was 16.
I got 2 Camrocks that are still in the original package.
I have no nostalgia value with any rocket stuff now. I can't. I do it every day of my life, and it's like, oh, it's just, I don't care.
You put out a lot of reissue kits. What drives these, since there's low market desire for expensive kits, what drives putting out a reissue kit?
I didn't do it. Dorfler did. He wanted to bring back a bunch of the old classic stuff. And,
Wasn't that kind of all the wheels for that kind of already in motion?
well, part of it was plastics, you know, oh, people, you know, touch the plastic, it's gonna kill you, it's got lead, it's got phthalates, it's got love. So we went to balsa and everything. And if balsa nose cones, you bring back classics. But
Did they sell?
they sell, but I would say not as good as our normal rocket line. They sell. But you would think, oh, people are gonna buy the heck out of these things. They sell, don't get me wrong, they sell. They're not fantastic top of line. In fact, you would never, ever, ever guess our top seller. And I'm not gonna tell you, but you would never guess what it is. For the last 2 years, number one seller, and we'll sell 5 times more of that rocket than any other rocket. I don't know why, but it sells. I can't tell you. Come on, you see what it's a BT-20 rocket with a nose cone and 3 fins. Simple, plain rocket we sell zillions of these.
Help me out here.
Like the guy who's a kid. And we like it.
Hey, so here's another whole topic that he didn't have to deal with, okay? John and I have to deal with this, and neither one of us really touched on it. We live in a very different legal and regulatory environment, okay? And when it comes to the product development side, we have a whole new set of regulations that have been enacted and in place for 2 years now under this new CPSIA. And every component that goes into our kits has to be tested for lead and phthalate content, because you know how many children are going to eat these model rockets.
Especially in California.
It is your government's place to protect you.
You get more exposure to lead by picking up a handful of dirt. And that's where we're lower than that. It's ridiculous. Everything, thousands and thousands of dollars get thrown into this test tube.
And it's dollars and it's time. And the standards are getting tighter in August.
Yeah.
Right now, we tested 300 parts per million for lead. In August, it's going to 100 parts per million. That means we have to retest everything. If you didn't test that.
If you see something different, like we used the Blue Ninja had the nice glitter tube, and now it doesn't, failed the test. So we took the glitter out. All right.
Yeah.
Stupid thing. Decals. It's got silver or chrome. Ah, fails the
We
test.
can't use certain colors in our
It's
decals
terrible.
anymore.
Are color parachutes coming back?
That's what happened.
They're printed now. They're colored. Yeah, they've been out now for about a year.
But the whole process is very cumbersome.
You can eat our parachutes.
Anyways, if anybody is interested, I have about 50 copies of these product design parameters, if anybody would like to take them, come on down and get it. So, I think our time's up.
Oh, we got that.
Close.
You want to come down and look at these wonderful drawings I created?